Okay, we are live on air. Welcome to the G2G conversation with Jessica Leiding of the People Development Department of Google. And this is Jennifer Hopwood, the training coordinator for the Southern Maryland Regional Library Association. Today we will be live streaming our conversation about how to implement the G2G program in Maryland libraries with ideas and brainstorming. For those of you that are watching the live streaming session, you can send questions to our Twitter feed. The Twitter feed is at SOMDREG Library. So I'm going to pass this over to Jessica.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And we'll see if you're able to project those slides again the same way with the screen share. That should still work. If not, it's not a huge deal. But hi guys, just like Jennifer said, my name is Jessica. Happy to be talking to you today. And I'm a member of Google, and in our People Development Department, which is basically our name for the Learning and Development organization at Google. And I am going to talk to you about our program that's called G2G, or Googler to Googler. And my plan is to just spend maybe about 10, 15 minutes of information about kind of the background of the program, how we started, what we do, things that we've learned along the way, and then just open it up for any questions that you have to dig into more of those topics, or when you're thinking about applying this to your own organization as well. So I have a little bit of information, but definitely want to focus more on questions and answers. So I'll start also by just a little bit of background about myself. I have been at Google for just over 6 years. I started on the sales sides of things, so the advertising sales, and then after about 2.5 years on that side, moved into the learning and development world. So I've been on that side for about 4 years or so. I have my Master's of Education in Human Resource Learning and Development, so got some experience in education outside of Google, but I have only worked in learning and development here at Google directly. And my role, I'm on the team that specifically program managers this G2G program, which is a peer-to-peer learning program. So that is my day in and day out, is thinking about this program, and that's my background. Any questions from you guys? Anything I'm leaving out about my background before I dig in?
Before we get started, I just want to mention that part of the inspiration for this conversation came from the Elliott Mazie Learning 2013 conference. I was fortunate to sit in on a presentation about the G2G program by Sarah Devereaux, and we've been in contact for about a year now trying to get this conversation so that we can spread the word to Maryland libraries. And it really plays into our learning portfolios because it's all about building our personal learning networks to help with that informal learning. So we're very fortunate to have Jessica here to explain more about the program.
Great, thanks. And Jennifer, are you able to screen share those slides, or should I just dig in? The slides aren't super important if not.
Yes, give me 1 second and I can bring those right up for you.
No problem, just to get a little bit of visual. But as Jennifer's bringing that up, so let me just go over kind of the quick background or explanation of what G2G is. So the G2G program stands for Googler to Googler, like I mentioned, and a Googler is a Google employee. So this is our peer-to-peer internal volunteer training program, and it basically allows any Googlers that want to teach, share, and learn from each other. So if you go to the next slide, Jennifer, that would be great.
Is everybody able to see the slides?
Yes, I see them.
Okay, good. All right.
No problem. So here's some pictures of our G2Gers in action. And the program currently has about 3,500 active participants, so that's roughly about 10% of the company. It's very much global. We have active G2Gers in every region, every office around the globe. And so these are folks that are dedicating a portion of their time outside of their core role at Google. And with that small portion of their time, they're doing everything from facilitating course sessions, they're doing one-on-one mentoring, designing learning experiences or designing online e-learnings or materials like that. So we're really getting involved with training in a lot of different ways. So talking about the overview and kind of the history of the program, and Jennifer, you can go ahead and click through to the next slide, that'd be great. So we currently have about 40,000 Googlers globally and over 100 products and services that we need to make sure that different Googlers know about. And these are constantly changing, and you can imagine that it really would take an army of learning and development professionals to keep up with all of those products and services that are changing, not to mention not only the training they need for those to know those products and services, but also professional development skills, everything from presentations to influencing to whatever skills that they need for their core role, plus kind of personal development they might want. So things on mindfulness or meditation, all of that falls within our learning and development organization. And we always said, you know, it would take an army for us to really be able to deliver all of that at the quality that our leaders expect. And our explanation of G2G is usually we knew it would take an army and we didn't have one, so we built one. So we really started from, like it says, humble beginnings, specifically with sales new hire trainings. That's really how G2G started. And what happened was there were so many sales new hires coming in the door, this was about 5 years ago, that the learning and development professionals could not keep up with it. I mean, we just truly did not have the resources to be personally training every single new hire coming in. So those L&D professionals decided to try out training some of the team members, of the sales team members, on how to do new hire training. So the sales team members that got involved dedicated a small portion, about 10% of their time, and that way the learning and development professionals were teaching team members how to train their own team members. And it was more about program management than completely delivering every single training session. So that started in one area. We piloted it, and because it went well, that spread globally. So you can go ahead and click to our full global image, Jennifer, on this slide, just so you can see the global impact. So like I said, this started with sales new hire training, and then the concept worked so well that it spread to other development areas and courses as well. So we started to see courses like presentation skills, leadership and teamwork, all kinds of topic areas started to have G2G facilitators actually delivering the content instead of solely being delivered from learning and development professionals. So this involved putting in place really clear facilitator guides, facilitator materials, clear processes to get those folks up and running and really feeling comfortable and confident of developing that content or delivering that content at the start. And then it just continued spreading from there. So now we actually have additional areas of the program. One is called Teach Your Own Stuff. And what this means is that any Googler, any employee at the company can actually design content from scratch. They can design a course that they want to run, or an e-learning, or a program, really whatever they'd like. And with our support, they're able to start new programs from whatever they feel their area of expertise is. So we have courses running through Teach Your Own Stuff on everything from salsa dancing and cookie making and baking and knitting and all kinds of hobbies and things like that, but also things like email inbox management, consulting skills, you know, really professional or role-specific skills that the Googler has decided they want to share their expertise with others through this program. And one other area I'll kind of highlight is role-specific trainings. So G2G facilitators are leading trainings or leading mentoring on skills that people need for their specific role. So consulting skills or client-facing best practices for sales members or product trainings, new process trainings, anything like that is actually being delivered by G2G facilitators. So at this point, with all of this expansion, you know, the program has really grown. We now, like I said, have over 3,500 active participants. That's around 10% of the company. So we're seeing that G2Gers are involved in really every area of learning and development, and they now deliver over 85% of the sessions and of the programs that we have available to Googlers. So let me stop there. I've got a little bit more to share with you guys, but any questions before I continue?
Hi, my name's Nini Began. Thank you so much. This is great. We really appreciate it. I have a question about how long is the typical training?
So the ones that the G2Gers are actually leading?
Yes.
Yeah, so it really varies. So I'd say on average, they're probably doing sessions that are maybe 2 or 3 hours. And they might do once a month or once a quarter. But we do have that are involved new hire trainings. And maybe they take a few days. An individual takes a few days out of a 3-week training. So they might actually spend a few days towards it, once a quarter, for example. So it really varies. But I'd say that's probably, represents kind of the ends of the spectrum.
Oh, thank you. And is it just, is it peer training, so it's just with one other individual, or is it with groups of people?
It could be either. So they might be facilitating sort of a classroom-style course session where it is one facilitator to a group, or they might be involved with peer-to-peer, kind of sitting down and providing one-on-one feedback or development. So it really could be either way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions so far?
Jessica, what kind of role do those non-job specific trainings play? You mentioned like knitting and stuff. Is that like part of the company culture that that type of training is accepted, or is this stuff done on their own time?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is very much a part of the Google culture. So these actually can be during the business day. They could be, literally at 3 p.m. or 10 a.m. or whatever time, people decide to. Sometimes the facilitator, the G2G'er, will choose to do it during lunch, or maybe if it's like a fitness class or something like that, it might be more likely at the end of the day. So maybe it's 5 to 6 or something like that. But exactly like you said, it's very much a part of our culture to kind of let people develop in whatever way they do want to develop. And as long as they're doing a good job in their core role and their manager is okay with it, then they can actually spend time learning sign language or learning knitting or meditation or whatever is available.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Right.
what kind of evaluation do you have for stuff like this?
Yeah, great question. And that, well, I want to talk a little bit more about that as well. But to answer quickly, all of our sessions are our course sessions, one-on-one sessions, everything is tracked in our kind of internal learning management system. And that includes participant feedback surveys built right in. So the main quantitative data-driven metric that we have is feedback scores from participants, and then also qualitative feedback that they can add comments as well. That's sort of across the board for everything. And then in addition, specific programs, whenever possible, will try and actually assess the impact of that training. So actually assessing, are people using those skills back on the job after they've, attended a course or they've had a mentor session. So whenever, that's sort of a program by program level, but we really try and look at both the participant feedback and also the impact, or how much they're retaining and using what they learned and what that might be impacting their performance or their team.
You mentioned you track everything through an LMS. Is that something that you've developed in-house, or do you outsource that?
That's in-house developed.
Is it like using Google, the same like content that you have in Google Drive and everything, or is this something that's not available to the public?
Yeah, it's not. It's actually completely developed by our engineers. So it uses some of the components, like we will have things like the surveys might use, something that's similar to like Google Drive Forms, but it's actually a completely kind of standalone tool that is developed internally just for us. Anything else? Okay, so I'm going to continue and then really want to open up to as many other questions as we have. But another area I kind of just want to dig into a little bit is sort of how my team supports the G2Gers and what my team does, and mainly kind of things that we've learned over the years of really watching this program develop and expand. So if you can do the next slide, Jennifer, I think it's the final slide I've gotten there. So key components, the things we've learned for kind of self-sustaining communities like this. So first of all, our team's mission, we define it as our mission is to make it fun, easy, and effective for Googlers to teach, learn, and share with each other. kind of a lot of words there, but that's really my team's mission, is really supporting the G2Gers that are involved in this, supporting Googlers that are learning and teaching each other as much as we can. So we've got a variety of ways that we do that. And everything kind of fits into our 3 pillars that we really come back to a lot, and that is supporting them via community, quality, and culture. So we try and help to establish a community of G2Gers working together, supporting each other, learning from each other. We try and focus on the quality so that the sessions that they are offering or the work that they are doing is as high quality as possible. And like I mentioned with the culture, really continuing the culture of Google through G2G and seeing how G2G can add to Google's culture. So that chicken and the egg, making sure the culture really aligns and supports each other back and forth. So I'm happy to talk more about any of that and what my team does, but I'd love to share kind of 5 key learnings that we've learned over the years of working with this program. So the first 3 are about working with the pool of G2G participants, the folks that are actually involved in the program. And a lot of times we think about this as find them, grow them, and keep them. So by finding them, we mean recruiting. So the first learning is really around recruiting them thoughtfully. So we've learned, over the years it's important to have that balance of not taking everyone and also making sure that people are really well aligned to how they're going to be involved. So making sure that the people that want to be involved are, but that they have a really good opportunity for them. It's not just, you want to do this and here's the need we have, okay, let's slot you into that. It's finding the right person for the right need, for the right program. And with that also comes making sure that the people that are involved with teaching or mentoring others truly want to be doing it. I think we've learned from the past that just because someone is really good at their job or is an expert doesn't mean they want to be teaching others in this kind of formalized way. Or they might want to mentor others but not lead a course, for example. So making sure that people are really a good fit for what they're going to be doing, and also making sure that they understand the commitment, that they're ready to commit to the number of hours per quarter, for example, that they're going to be doing, that they understand what the commitment is and what they're getting involved in. So recruiting thoughtfully is number 1. The second one is really putting the time in to help develop and support the people that are involved. So making sure that participants really have access to facilitation workshops. We actually run those. We have a series of workshops on facilitating trainings. And we also make sure that G2Gers have access to experts and mentors themselves so that they can tap into people that have been facilitating and kind of share challenges, get ideas, get advice from each other. So really making sure that we've helped to develop and support them to be able to lead trainings or mentor or design e-learnings as best as they can. They're able to do it, but it just takes a little bit of support and development from us. Number 3 is putting in the time to keeping them motivated. So this is the keep them side of it. So keeping them motivated, we always remember the great motivators are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So making sure that our program and what we provide to G2Gers is really trying to always drive between those 3, helping them with autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So one example of that is, thinking of ways that we can recognize and reward the people that are volunteering their time towards us. And we've seen that, monetary rewards only go so far. We don't really focus on that, and instead we try and think of more meaningful recognitions. So some examples that we do are we try to hold an annual summit for really involved G2Gers, people that have, committed their time, and we bring them together and give them some extra opportunities, extra recognition, and kind of community building at an annual summit that people really look forward to, and they see that as recognition. We also have some kind of more exclusive development opportunities that might be available to only our most advanced trainers, for example, and we allow them to attend. And also things like formal recognition through annual performance evaluations, sharing performance evaluations with their managers, making sure that they're getting kind of praise and accomplishment that's seen by their managers, and through the formal performance evaluations that we have at the company as well. So recruiting them, making sure to help develop and support them, and keeping them motivated. And then number 4 and 5 are a little bit more about the program and what we've learned about running the program this way. So number 4 key learning is protect the program's credibility. really put the effort into proving and showing and protecting the quality of the work that the volunteers are doing. So we've made sure to use those feedback scores, use the other metrics and data that we have to show the quality of the G2Gers and the work that they're doing, to share it as much as we can so that people understand the quality of the program, and also making sure that we've got quality assurance in place. So not being afraid to ask someone to leave if they're really not performing well. Maybe they would be better at mentoring than leading a course session, for example. So really making sure to not be afraid to address folks that might be struggling or that might have some quality issues, and seeing what you can do about that. And finally, a huge learning is distributing ownership. So really, with a volunteer base of thousands of people, we need to make sure that we're not trying to control everything. And we've learned to really that it's fine to trust these participants and trust these volunteers. You know, they make good decisions, they produce quality results, they really care about their work, even if we aren't controlling everything that they do. So again, if we try and control too much, we're taking away that autonomy, which we know is a huge motivator for them. So trusting them, letting them make those decisions, but supporting them, whenever we can as well. So those are the 5 key learnings I wanted to share with everyone. So recruit thoughtfully, develop and support, keep them motivated, and then protect the program's credibility and distribute ownership. So that's all the information I have for you guys, and I'm happy to dig into any of those areas if you'd like to hear more, or just answer any questions that you have.
Jessica, this is Trina. You had mentioned at the beginning that when you first started this program that you came out with these very clear guides and guidelines for the people that were going to be participating as facilitators. Can you share a little bit more about what was included in that information?
Yeah, absolutely. So based on the program or what the specific G2G is going to be doing, each kind of course or each learning opportunity at Google has a program manager, and that would be a learning and development professional. So as the program manager, I might be program managing 5 courses and 2 or 3 different e-learnings or online options within one kind of content area. So the program manager is able to really have a say over the G2Gers that they're going to recruit for mentoring or for developing or delivering specific courses. So if I'm the program manager for a course on presentation skills and I'm recruiting G2Gers, I might decide I want to specifically have G2Gers deliver this course that have been at the company at least 6 months, or that have delivered presentations regularly for at least a year, or whatever I decide. So there's a level of, depending on what the G2G is doing, there might be some requirements around their tenure or their past experience that the program manager chooses. In order to join the program overall, we don't have any requirement like that. So someone who comes to me and says, I would like to be involved as a G2G facilitator, I want to start training, help me find something. There could be other programs that don't have any requirement in terms of how long you've been at the company or what your experience is. So they might need a little bit of help finding the right fit for them, like I was talking about, making sure they're recruited into the right area. But specific programs have some guidelines like that, others don't. And then the other thing to touch on there is that once they have kind of been accepted or they know exactly how they're going to be involved, they go through, and this could look different for different programs, but they get sort of a facilitator guide. So it's actually letting them know, for the course you're going to be delivering, here's the timeline, here's the activities you're going to do, here's the main talking points. So they've got kind of online docs. I mean, we of course use Google Docs for this. They have documentation around how to run that course and what are some additional resources they could look into to maybe build their own expertise in that area. For example, a slide presentation deck, we call it, Google Slides presentation if they're going to be using that, or materials they're going to use for activities. All of that is kind of packaged for them. But then we know that they, again, they have that autonomy. They might choose to change it up a little bit. They might change one of the activities or add in some additional anecdotes or, you know, their own background, which is great. I mean, that's exactly what we want to see them do. So there's kind of the guidance, to wrap this up or sum this up, there's sort of the guidelines around the recruiting and helping them find the specific way to be involved that makes the most sense for them. And then once they've found that, it's more on our side to make sure that on the learning and development side, to make sure that there's clear guidelines and support for them of exactly how to run that session or how to mentor, you know, what's the way we want them to do the mentoring for that case. Does that make sense overall? I know it was kind of a lot, but does that make sense?
No, it does make sense, because I was specifically wondering about content when you're talking about training new hires in their job roles, not in those extra things that people are sharing outside skills. But,
Yeah.
you know, were there guidelines for content when it was a job-related skill? And it sounds like you already have the content and you're just sharing that with them, and they're putting maybe their spin on it if they're the facilitator and they want to change it up a little.
Exactly. That's kind of the general case, that from the learning development side, we've kind of created the content, and what they're doing is picking that up and delivering that. So most of the time, especially for new hire training, that is what's happening. But at the same time, we might have somebody say, you know, I'm a Googler and I'm on X team and I want to train all the new hires on this team on some other content area. And that's fine, and we can help them actually develop that and be able to do that if that makes sense for their team, for new hires.
So in that case, if it was new content that was Google-specific job training, you would just help guide them and consult on the content creation and help guide them, and then you could then share that out for other people to use later. Like that would be your new guide to share out with people.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's really something that's evolved over time. At first, G2Gers were just doing pre-created content. They were just kind of handed the facilitator guide and here's what you're going to be doing. And over the years, we've actually seen that they want to be involved with the content creation as well, and it's gone fantastically because they're really the subject matter experts, right? It's really connecting and allowing the subject matter expert to actually develop and lead the trainings themselves with that bit of support that we can provide along the way. But exactly how you just described it is definitely the case.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
How much leeway do they get to put their own spin onto that pre-created content? You know, is it do they have to stay within the specific structures to a point, or are they allowed to mix things up as much as they want? What's the parameters for that?
Yeah, great question. So we generally kind of, when they ask us that, we generally use the 80-20 rule. So 80% should be the same, and we might talk to them about, we want to make sure that the people that are attending have a consistent experience. So it's usually about 80% needs to be consistent, and maybe about 20%, they can put their own spin on it. And we also encourage them to have an open relationship and open communication with the program manager of that course or that opportunity, so that if they do try out a new activity or they try something in a new way and it goes really well, to definitely come back to the program manager and to the other people that are delivering that course and let them know, so that we're kind of always evolving the content based on what they might decide to try out or little tweaks that they might make when they're leading it at the times to different teams or whatever comes up for them.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Do we have any other questions?
Hi, it's Nini again. I have a question. So about how many people are doing the learning development piece then to support this?
So from the on the learning and development side?
Yes.
My team is about 7 or 8, let's call it, because we have one person who's kind of split between 2 teams. So my team is about 8 people globally, which seems like a very small team to be supporting 3,500 active participants, plus all the program managers that are involved. But the way we do that is we've also found that people want to be involved in additional ways from what I've talked about. So we actually have a couple of people that are doing rotations on our team. So they might spend 20% of their time kind of getting even more involved with our team and being involved on the strategic or the program management side. And we also have one kind of branch of the program that in the past year or so that we've started that we're calling G2G Champions. And what that is that we try and have at least one or two people in every office globally, and we've got over 80 offices globally. So one or two people that are kind of the on-the-ground support for any active G2Gers in that office. So a G2G champion might be spending about 10% of their time. So again, they're volunteering. They have a core role, but they're spending about 10% of their time really acting as the liaison between the G2Gers in that office and our team. So we kind of have this, I always think of it as this pyramid of support, right? That we've got the 8 or so of us at the actual, 100% working on this. This is our full-time role. And then we have champions. We've got about 100 or so champions globally that then are the first point of contact for the G2Gers themselves. So hopefully that makes sense. But we've seen, over the years that people want to be involved in these different ways, and they're willing to volunteer their time, and they're really motivated, to support each other and to help us support this full community. So that's why it's kind of a tough question to answer and give a, really specific number around this. But, it is one of those things, like, it takes a village, right? It is a lot of people involved, but in varying amounts of time that they're actually spending on it. And I think that's what works, that we've figured out the scale and kind of tapping into people's motivation, but at the amount of time that they're able to give to support, the 8 of us that are doing it full time.
And what typically do you tell people as far as what the commitment is?
Yeah, great question. So on average, the average G2Ger is spending less than 1% of their time directly involved. So that means that they're probably on average spending, I'm going to say 4 or 5 hours a quarter. So they might be leading a session that is 3 hours once a quarter and doing a few half-hour mentoring sessions, for example. That's on average. Like I mentioned, it really depends. So we might have a program, for example, there's one program, a course that's run over 5 weeks on leadership and development. And the facilitator of that course meets with the participants once a week for an hour for 5 weeks. So if the program manager of that course was looking for new facilitators, or if a G2G just wanted to become involved as a facilitator of that course, they would find out specifically about the commitment for that one. So they would be told, okay, it's 5 hours a week of facilitation. There's a half-hour a week on those weeks of facilitator meetings to make sure everybody's comfortable with the content. So they would really be told exactly what, that program-specific commitment is. And that's just one example. I mean, it really runs the gamut. Other programs might be a full day or 2 full days, once a quarter, things like that. But on average, looking completely across the board, the average G2Ger spends about 5 hours or so per quarter contributing time.
Great, thank you so much. And just to be really clear, the 7 people are basically developing all of the content.
No.
Okay, that's where I'm getting a little confused.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way our org works is we have the program managers. What we call program managers are actually the ones developing the content. So a program manager might be the program manager for presentation skills, or for strategic thinking skills. And they are responsible for developing the content, whether it's courses, online, self-paced, e-learnings or resources, or potentially even content area specific mentoring type structures. So the program manager is responsible for their specific content of that area. What my team does is then kind of is the umbrella over all of that and helps to support any G2G no matter what they're doing. So it helps them to build facilitation skills that would apply to no matter what course they're facilitating. Or would help with the G2G champions, for example. They can answer questions and provide support to any G2Gers no matter what they're doing. Recognition opportunities, these summits that I mentioned. So those things that really apply no matter what content they're doing. That's what the 7 of us do. That's a way to summarize it. But the program managers are actually the ones, and might be working with instructional designers as well, to develop that content.
And are the program managers the people you were saying were the 100 people that were the champions, or are they different?
They're different.
Okay. So about how many program managers do you have, and are they also in the volunteer pool of G2Gers, or are they a different group of people?
Right, great question. So the program managers are within the learning and development organization. So they're not volunteers. They're 100%, their role, is within learning and development. And globally, let's see, I would say we probably have about, this is all of the content across all of Google. We probably have about 60 or 70 program managers. And that's everything from professional skills, role-specific programs, just every program and, type of learning need you can imagine. It's probably about that many, about 60 or 70. And those are full-time 100% L&D professionals.
Okay, now I'm a lot clearer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the questions. The more questions you ask, the more complicated it gets, right? But, but keep them coming. And one thing that I'll just highlight, again, if you guys were thinking of using a structure like this or using a program like this within your own organization, is, everything I'm talking about now is 5-6 years, depending on when you count the, origins of G2G. So this is very, down the road, has developed over many years. And what I would recommend is, starting with, okay, what is maybe one specific program area, whether it's, role-specific skills or a specific skill everyone in the organization wants to build, something like that, kind of focusing on one area or one aspect of the program, and thinking about how could, any employee at the organization be actually working to help develop courses or lead courses or mentor or, really do that employee-to-employee learning, sharing, and teaching. But rather than thinking about, all of this organization that we have in place, focusing on one area first. And those aspects that I shared, are probably the most important to think about in terms of, how can you help develop and support the folks that are going to volunteer their time to be involved in this at the beginning, and then seeing how it grows from there.
That's great advice, Jessica. Thank you.
Jessica, that brought up a question in my mind. You're talking about employees to employees. Does it happen that you have a employee leading a class maybe for people that are above them at Google, like management are the students, but yet you have like a front-end staff member is the one doing the class? You mentioned there's a lot of cross-training and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does that dynamic work out?
Yeah, so that does happen all the time. So there might be someone who is a facilitator for strategic thinking, and actually we had this happen recently as one example. The management team in an office asked they wanted to take a course on strategic thinking, so the person that led the course for them specifically was not a manager, it was a team member. And so that kind of stuff does happen all the time. And I think especially this is where my team comes into play, with really helping to develop and support that G2G'er. That helps them to have the confidence and the skills to be a good facilitator. So they might not be at the same level, even in strategic thinking, as those managers are, but their job is to really help facilitate those discussions, those activities, really run the course in a way that those managers are going to get a lot out of it. So we really do a lot of work with helping our G2Gers understand that you don't have to be the expert to be leading a session, because the session shouldn't just be about you giving the group information and you sharing your expertise. There should also be activities, there should also be discussions, there should be ways for the group to actually learn from each other and use all the expertise that's in the room, not just the expertise of the facilitator. So through our development and support of those G2G facilitators, we're able to get them to that level where they can provide a really good experience, even for people that might have more expertise than they do, because they're facilitating it. They're really skilled at the facilitation part of it. Does that answer your question, Jennifer?
No, that does answer my question, and I think those are great points about having them involved in the process and everything as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned that the program is about 6 years old or so, and what kind of, are there any big hiccups that you had down the road that, you learned from, things that you'd advise us to watch out for?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of those key learnings, came out of different obstacles or challenges we faced along the way. So one thing, especially early on, I would say we really worked on, avoiding that that kind of bias towards, just getting somebody in place and not putting someone in the right fit for them. And the way that that came out is, we'd be working with program managers, for example, and they would want to run a training on sales skills, let's say. And they would just tap into, okay, who's the best salesperson on the team? That's who should be leading this course. Well, that person might be great at sales, but they might not be a fantastic teacher. They might not be someone who actually is interested, in, leading a course for others in that way. So we really kind of had to, maybe backpedal a few times and think, okay, do we have the right people leading courses? And work with, the folks that we're recruiting for specific programs to look at, this person might have the best sales metrics, but somebody else might actually be able to teach the rest of the team better. So things like that, I think, we learn from challenges and learn from mistakes in the past. So really making sure to get the right people in the right positions or in the right fit. And I think, one of the biggest things is that last piece that I shared too, the distributing ownership. So it's taken time, it's taken, I think, years of seeing how capable G2Gers are to realize that we can relinquish some of that control. When I talked about that 80-20, we let them, make decisions, make little changes, do what they're going to do, and trust that they're going to still produce a really high quality result. And that took some time, right? Because I think the natural inclination is to think, well, if someone isn't an L&D professional, how could they be so, how could they lead a good training session? Or how could they build, an e-learning that's really successful? And we really, spent the time to do the data analysis, to do the research to show that we actually completely see that G2G facilitators are right on par with people dev, with my team, when we're facilitating. The feedback scores, the impact metrics that we see are absolutely equivalent. And it really takes some time of doing that research, gathering that data, trusting that G2G facilitators or G2G mentors or whatever they're doing are going to do a good job, even if we're not forcing them to stick to a script when they're facilitating. Or even if we're not, putting limitations on them, the decisions they make are correct. Because we always think of it as, if you're volunteering for something, you care about doing a good job, right? People generally don't volunteer for something that they're not motivated to do a good job to. No one says, I want to teach a course and I don't care if I'm horrible at it. So when they are motivated, to get involved, we trust them. And we've learned that over years and really learned that they are capable of so much more than we might have thought they were at the beginning. And that also comes in, one more point on that, that also comes into play on, and I've mentioned that kind of originally they were sort of handed a facilitator guide and said, this is exactly what you're going to do for the course. And over the years, it has expanded to them developing their own courses, to them being involved in mentoring, being involved in designing online, all these things that I'm talking about that they're doing now, that has really evolved more and more over the years because we've seen that if people are motivated and they have the capability to do this, they just might need some support and some development from us. But it's amazing what they do. When we kind of let go of the reins and say, go ahead, we'll support you, but go ahead and do it. It's really fantastic what they're able to do.
Great, thank you for that feedback. Are there any other questions for Jessica before I bring up our final slide?
This is Nini. Just one more clarification with that, because I was actually going to ask you how scripted the facilitator guides are. And you may have already mentioned the process, but so if they're not scripted, then whatever is produced, the program managers review that, or the learning development people review it, or how does that work? And you mentioned instructional designers. About how many of instructional designers do you have, and how are they working in this process?
Yeah, okay, so let me see if I can address those. So first, just mentioning on the scripting. So generally, when we create facilitator guides or lesson plans, whatever you want to call it, it will kind of spell out, these are the talking points, but they're suggestions. It's more in a way to, make sure the facilitator knows this is what the message that we want you to get across, and this is what we think is important for the learning participants. But if they want to get that message across in a different way, right, they want to use their own examples and, different talking points, but essentially get the same message across, then they're completely able to do that. So we do have facilitator guides with talking points in the sense that it actually spells out here's what to say, but it's not required that they say, those exact words in that way. So that's one point to touch on. And instructional designers, I'm sorry, Nina, I'm forgetting your second question, though, the second piece of it.
You mentioned instructional designers working with the program managers, and I just wanted to get a little bit more information on how that works and how many instructional designers are you working with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say instructional designers are probably about 20 or so, and they're doing everything from specific requests to build out. A lot of what they're doing is technical, building out online tools that we've got for product updates, and really doing a lot of coding, and might even be working with engineers to build tools like that. So they might be doing that kind of work. They might be building e-learnings or online learnings, that sort of stuff. And they also might be involved with a g2g who's developing a course. So, for example, one way they support is any g2g can request to have kind of a consultation with an instructional design professional. So the instructional designers are within the learning and development department, 100%, that's their role. But they can actually do, a 1 or 2 hour, that generally that's what it is, consult with a g2g who might be developing a new course or a new learning experience. So they can support in that way. Usually that might be like one meeting, the g2g goes away and builds their course or builds whatever they're building, and then they might follow up with the instructional designer just to say, okay, here's my output, can I get your feedback on that? So they aren't usually, the instructional designers aren't usually building things for g2gers, but they can be a support for them if the g2g is working on that. So hopefully that answers that question pretty clearly.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. And I thought you had one more question that I'm forgetting, but maybe I misunderstood.
Well, I think the other question was a little bit more about the vetting process. So the g2g builds the course. So let's say in this case they've met with an instructional designer. They do a follow-up piece. Where does it go from there? Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you for reminding me. So that's where kind of our quality assurance comes into place. And that's something that, like I mentioned, everything that a learner, a Googler, could attend or take part in is in our learning management system. And we have the feedback surveys automatically attached to that. So essentially what we do is we have all this data about all these different sessions, but we can pull out any that we feel like the feedback scores are showing that there might be a problem. So most of the time, I mean, we continually look at this and make sure there aren't overall problems, and 95% plus of the time the feedback scores look great, all the metrics we have look really good. When there might be instances of a specific g2g facilitator, continually getting lower scores, or maybe we see their scores starting to slip, we really rely on the data to, I mean, Google is everything we do is driven by data, right? So we really rely on the data to flag for us, if there might be instances where we might need to intervene. So in those cases, we might reach out to that g2g facilitator and, see if there's anything we can do to help. Or take a look at that e-learning or whatever they created
and follow back up with them and, you know, have a discussion around, here's what the feedback is showing us. Let's talk about how you maybe could improve this, or, you know, what are changes you could make. So that's really all part of our quality assurance process, mainly based on, you know, feedback scores and other metrics that we have on impact. And when we do see kind of red flags, then we intervene and, you know, try and help in those situations. And luckily, it's low enough where we are able to do that. If that was a wider quality problem, we would probably have to be rethinking this all, right? It's because it's a rare case that there are quality problems that we're able to really intervene and help in those situations. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the process. So a G2G may develop a course working with a program manager and sometimes an instructional designer, and then they deliver the course. Mm-hmm. And then for quality assurance, you pull the evaluation data generally. And if you're noticing anything's going on, other than that, you're just trusting the process, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So all the data across the board gets pulled. So we have, you know, large reports, and then we've got kind of automated systems that say, you know, flag for us the situations or, you know, the sessions that had lower scores. So everything is automatically being analyzed, and then the ones that look like there could be a problem, that's what kind of comes through to us to intervene on.
Yeah, but I guess I'm getting back to it's interesting that you don't have this huge vetting process where someone designs something and it's got to be seen by 5 people before they can deliver it. It sounds like the whole point of this program and trusting your volunteers and what you've been learning over the last 6 years is that you can let it go. And so then they can, there probably is through the LMS or whatever, some way that then they can share that facilitator guide that the program manager and the G2G has developed. Mm-hmm. And it continually, the next person who takes it can continue to improve on it or change it or whatever and make it fit for them. And again, the way that you're evaluating is through the actual outcome of the class rather than looking at all the pieces of documentation. Is that right?
Yep. Everything you said is exactly correct.
Okay, cool.
You did better than I could have.
Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Thank you.
This is Trina. Along those same lines, you had mentioned at one point in the beginning that the folks at the top of this, like the 7 or 8 folks that are in your department that are running this, provided facilitation guidelines. And I mean, is there any sort of training in the beginning for facilitation skills and mentoring? Is that done with the G2Gers before they start doing this, or only when they ask for those things?
Yeah, great question. So that's available to them even before they deliver their first course or before they develop their first e-learning or whatever they're doing. So that is, our goal is to make that just consistently accessible to them. And we sort of have a path of, you know, we've got sort of once you're getting started, basic facilitation skills, basic design skills. We've got opportunities in that area. And then as they start facilitating or designing or mentoring and they become more intermediate, we've got kind of options there. We've got advanced. So it's sort of this path that can help, you know, follow them as they're building their experience and their skills. And that's a huge part of what we do. I mean, that actually was one of, when this whole program was very first starting, that was one of the first components of it, is making sure that we've got facilitation skill development opportunities for them. And that's just continued to build over time as their skill needs have grown and expanded in wonderful ways of everything they've been doing. But yeah, so that is available. Some programs might require them to take a course on facilitation skills before they deliver their own first session. Other times they might be able to deliver a session, but it's not required that they do that first. We generally recommend that they do it within their first quarter of being involved with G2G, but it can kind of vary program to program what the requirement is.
Okay, that makes sense. And then probably later, if you're getting some mixed feedback, that those tools could be used to support those needs then as well if they hadn't done them previously.
Exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we do try and having that area, they've got the opportunities that they can tap into are workshops, mentors, so they can actually work with an experienced facilitator that can shadow their session and give them personalized feedback and kind of do some one-on-one work with them. So there's courses, group courses, one-on-one, and then also online materials of tips and tools and things they could be thinking about that they can kind of pull up, you know, in the moment, self-paced whenever it's useful to them. We've got a variety of options for them.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Jennifer mentioned, and maybe this is just something I will leave with you guys, you know, basically if you want to continue the conversation, but thanks for showing that slide, Jennifer. This is one slide, you know, a lot of times we like to share, you know, with folks that are thinking about a model like g2g for your organization. So just some things to think about, you know, could this work for you? How might you adapt it? What impact do you think you would have, and what challenges do you think you would encounter? So I'll just kind of leave that for you guys, however you want to use it, you know, if you want to get together and continue the conversation or whatever might be useful to you.
I think we're already on our way to some of these. I mean, like Nini, you mentioned that Sam at Eastern Shore is gathering a list of presenters from local libraries and everything. So that's kind of the peer-to-peer type training and everything.
Well, I think that we have experience with this in the synchronous training and the online training and the Skillsoft and the projects that we've been involved with for the last 8 years. We have a lot of these pieces, and I think it's really interesting to think about applying that deeper into our organizations and think about, you know, if we could share some of this statewide. And then I also think about for the public, how we could do this to work with the public also. Be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, and this is just completely, it just pops into my head. Here in my town in Ann Arbor, Michigan, we have this monthly kind of community gathering called Nerd Night. And I know this exists in other cities too. But I always thought that this is so similar to g2g because what it is anybody from the community can lead 20-minute or half-hour sessions on whatever their area of expertise is. And there's usually about 2 or 3 each time. So, and this has been hosted through the library in our town in the past, but now it's actually a standalone. So the one I went to was like a tree expert talking about how to recognize different kinds of trees, and another person talking about a musical festival that happened here in the 70s and just talking about like the history of that. So very random topics, but it was so interesting. And it was really people just kind of, you know, building a session around whatever they wanted to share, whatever they had expertise in. So it's similar to that aspect we have of the teacher-owned stuff content. So that just pops into my head when I'm thinking about kind of the public.
Thank you so much. I'm going to investigate that some more. That's awesome.
Yeah. I love that idea.
It's really cool. Nerd Night. If you do a Google search for Nerd Night, then I'm sure you'll find information about it.
Yeah. And it might be interesting for us to think about mixing that up. Nerds coming from our staff and our public, and mixing all that up would be kind of interesting too.
We should have an internal library nerd night to test it out. Just have the librarians across the state come together to do a presentation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jessica, thank you very much for sharing your information about the g2g program and spending an hour with us answering our questions. And thank you, Trina and Nini, for asking questions and joining us in the live conversation. This will be sent out to the Maryland Staff Development Specialists. We are recording, so hopefully this conversation will continue further. And I thank you for sparking our ideas.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys. I was really happy to hear more about, you know, what you guys are all thinking about, and happy to help. So thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you so much.
Of course.